Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime as usual, Vasili, Gianarakos, my friend. Good day for you. Good season. Off season for the Flyers. Things are looking good. What's going on, buddy?
Doing well, Yariv. Things are looking pretty good for the Flyers in terms of their offseason. If you kind of just look back at what's been going on here, I think it's probably one of their best offseasons they've had in the past couple of seasons, and it makes it more exciting for us to talk about for sure. Just in terms of me personally, I wanted to announce that I will be writing for Daily Faceoff in a couple of weeks here, so it's a really amazing opportunity. And shout out to all the people over there for kind of giving me the chance, and it's going to be great and more hockey content for everybody. And I mean, even more Flyers content coming up for Flyers Nitty Gritty and the channel as well. So everybody stay tuned. And really, we couldn't do a lot of this stuff without everybody's support. So it's amazing stuff. And we just had our most successful episode hitting like 1,000 views. So we want to just kind of thank everybody for that. And there's just a lot of Flyers news to talk about, even though the off season is kind of getting into that lull, but everything's going good. You're even. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well, dude. Yeah. So it is. So for just to recap a little bit. So Vasili's 100% still with Flyers Nitty Gritty. He's still going to be doing the show. Nothing's changing here, but he's adding an awesome opportunity to work with Daily Faceoff. So check out his articles. Some will be by him. It's going to be all hockey news, right? The entire NHL league.
Exactly.
Yep. So every now and then you'll probably catch one of his articles shooting out there in a timely manner. But it's great. It's great for us, great for Flyers Nitty Gritty. It's obviously amazing for Vasili. And obviously, congratulations, buddy. It's
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate awesome. It. And again, just to reiterate what Vasili was saying, we did have our biggest episode. And again, biggest episode for this podcast. We have grown immensely. So thank you. Just like Vasili was saying, humbly, thank you all so much for listening. It's been awesome. And, we had a feeling that Steve Kornianos would bring, the numbers up again. People obviously love him. We love him. But the episodes have been growing, and this one was a huge success. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as we enjoyed recording it. We were excited to record it. And as you noticed, if you guys missed it, there's about a 40-minute segment just talking about Michkov alone. And I can talk about the kid for hours, and we're actually going to talk about him again today. But again, thank you all so much. Just a reminder to like, subscribe, share our stuff if you're kind enough to do that. And rate us on iTunes and Spotify. Humongous help. Also hit the bell if you want to be notified to every episode that comes out. We do one a week so far, but we have some ideas of adding some additional content too. So that's coming. And also shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks on 4th and South. They are not open yet. I will keep repeating that until they open, but they will be opening soon. But when they do open, we'll announce it here. Jim Steaks, 4th and South. Make sure to keep them in your minds and in your hearts. All right. Got all that stuff out of the way. Vasili, let's get into all the topics, and then I'll kind of go through it a little bit, and then we'll get started. So we're going to talk a little bit about Michkov, some attitude issues. We're going to talk about DeAngelo and his status. We'll talk about the Kolosov signing, the Noah Cates signing, the York signing, what's going on with Frost and Lycksell. We'll do a little bit dev camp update from what we saw from the recent dev camp scrimmage game. That's also available on YouTube. If you guys have not watched it, you can go there to watch it on the Flyers YouTube channel. And then we're going to go through the Flyers depth chart. And that should be a fun one, and it would be more improvised. All right. Let's get into it, Vasili. I want to hear your opinions on this because we haven't necessarily talked about this one-on-one. Matvei Michkov, for those who are not aware, there is a clip going on. I don't know what it was from. Maybe it was Locked On Habs or something like that. It was a Habs.
Spit Chicklets.
Was it Spit and Chicklets specifically?
Yeah.
They weren't?
Yeah.
Right, okay. I just remember Paul Bissonnette talking. So yeah, from Spit and Chicklets, they were talking about Matvei Michkov. And Paul Bissonnette is a Coyotes fan, let's be honest. That's his team. And they were talking about reasons not to draft him, and then brought up that he has some serious character issues, doesn't listen to anybody, not pros, not coaches, and tell people to piss off or whatever. And he's got a bad attitude, and that's why he fell. Vasili, let's get your thoughts on it first. I'll react after.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of Michkov and just the attitude, obviously, these rumblings, as they're calling them, right, have been coming out since before the draft. Personally, I think a lot of it is very overblown. I think if you're the Montreal Canadiens or the Arizona Coyotes or potentially a team that thinks that, oh shit, we might have made a mistake and missed out on drafting Matvei Michkov here. These are rumors that maybe, agents, well, not agents, but maybe, their front office is kind of feeding out there to the media. Well, we heard this. And it's kind of eased a bit of the blow on their fan base, right? Because Montreal's fan base has been kind of irate that Michkov was selected over Reinbacher. I'm not sure about Arizona's fan base and what their thoughts are, but I mean, I don't think it's as irate as Montreal, so it's mainly them there. But in terms of the Spittin' Chicklets clip, one thing that people need to kind of realize is the video, if you listen to the episode, was actually taken out of context. So they did kind of shit on Michkov in the sense that, okay, there's some character issues, things like that. But the Chicklets guys, they actually praise Michkov a bit. They talk about his skill. Biznasty actually mentions that he loves the kid and that Michkov, he thinks is an elite talent. And then they mention the character issues after all that. So you don't hear any of the good, you just hear all the bad, right? So that's kind of the thing that I think we have to remember when we look at these clips is it's cut out, it's put out there for a reason because obviously, whoever posts the video here is trying to get a reaction from what's being said, which, I mean, it makes sense. Personally, like I said, I think it's overblown. I mean, we hear how much of a hard worker that Michkov actually is. And also, even if there are some, maturity concerns or attitude concerns, like you have to think, right? He's a 17-year-old kid, just turned 18 recently. He's a very young individual in general. Like usually at that age, you don't have everything all figured out maturity wise or, personality wise or how you're going to act. Like people make mistakes. So even if some of these things potentially are true, right? I don't think that there's not an opportunity for him to learn a lesson and improve as a human being, as a person. But I do think it's really overblown. And I did want to bring up a tweet by Alexander Appleyard. Shout out to him. And he kind of mentioned in relation to all the Michkov slander coming out, TVA Sports spoke to Michkov's HC Sochi teammate Dmitry Zavgordini a month before the draft, and this is what he had to say about the Flyers prospect. So, my earliest memories of Matvei are a young man who never wants to leave the ice and who talks to all the guys like he's known them for years. I remember thinking to myself, wow, who is this crazy guy? Quickly, I noticed all his talent and all the love he had for hockey. Sometimes I arrived at the arena for practice and he was already on the ice practicing and trying things that only he knows the secret. He's extremely competitive, continues the HC Sochi player. He devotes countless hours to improving his game. He constantly wants to find new ways to stand out. In a few years, thanks to his work, he will be able to say that he's the perfect hockey player. Well, sometimes he is expressive, laughs. The HC Sochi player. He's a very good guy, but there were some nights when at the start of his stay with us, his emotions took over. During certain games where we lost, he would get up in the locker room and give motivational speeches filled with rage and intensity. I remind you that he was only 18 years old and that he was then surrounded by veterans. He meant well, but he learned over the year to do it the right way. Guys came to understand that everything he did was for the good of the team and related to his love of the game. And everyone took in that he just had a lot of leadership in him. Off the ice, he's very calm and very funny, and we really appreciated him. So I just wanted to mention that, and that's from one of his teammates speaking about him. So personally, I think if you hear that, it kind of removes any doubt from my mind that a lot of this is overblown. And then also, like Ska, are they really going to want to sign a guy who supposedly has all these problems and is a locker room cancer for 3 years? They'd probably be looking to say, hey, go to the NHL and don't come around our team if you're going to be doing stuff like this. So I just think the kid is kind of just getting slandered. And it's unfortunate because he is just a kid, right? And I mean, these people don't know him personally and they don't know his personality. So I think it's just it shouldn't be something that's said that openly in such a public forum as Spittin' Chicklets. And without really any concrete sources, right? So that's one thing that I didn't like about it. But also for the Chicklets guys, like they didn't mention the fact that they actually praised the guy beforehand. So I think it's overblown in that sense too. But what's your thoughts on it, Yariv?
I think that was very well said. And I appreciate you adding. I did read those quotes earlier, and I'm really glad that you read that out loud here and cleared up the context. I didn't realize that Bissonnette, that they praised him prior. I did see that it was out of context. I kind of just took it as I think Bill Meltzer had this tweet where he was talking about how this isn't a show for entertainment. It's not necessarily like a news break show. So, you know, you got to take that with a grain of salt. They're kind of just talking off the cuff about the kid. And I think it's really, I think it's a great thing that you said that, because they're probably going to attack Spit and Chicklets a little too much, and it's probably stupid. But I'll say this, okay? That description that you read out loud of his teammate and everything, all I can think about when I hear that description, I was like, that sounds like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, literally.
And
he wants to win so bad, right?
Yeah, like they would yell at their teammates. Like if you guys watch anything about these guys, like any of the documentary, they were not nice guys.
Yeah.
Like they're not easy to be around. Like champions that play on that level sometimes are easy. Sometimes you could be more LeBron James, or I don't know how Sidney Crosby is personally. I'd imagine maybe he's a little more lax potentially.
Well, Nathan McKinnon, there's the aura around him that he's kind of like that. He makes sure his teammates are sticking to their diets, things like that, which is kind of like, okay, that's a little out there, right?
But if you think about it, like if you told our media, it's a great point. If you told our media that Noah Cates, which sounds kind of crazy, but let's say Travis Konechny got up in front of the entire team and started yelling at them about what they can eat, people will be like, what? But it's like
make a big deal out of it. Yeah.
But that's what Tortorella has been talking about, is that he shouldn't have to say anything. They're supposed to do it. Somebody's supposed to stand up and be like, I'm not going to lose this fucking game. Excuse my cursing. I'm not going to lose this game. You know? Like, I don't know. I hear that stuff and I'm like, yeah, it sounds like a potential franchise caliber player. I was like, there's a really good chance that they're going to have that attitude.
He seems very dedicated, obviously, to his craft. That's the first thing, right? Like the teammate was saying how he arrives to practice early. You know, he's working on his game all the time. But then also, you know, at that age, to have the confidence also to go in there and talk in that way, because you're so passionate about the team winning and like wanting to do well. Obviously, the player that was talking about him mentioned that, you know, he found a better way to do it later on. But I think it just shows just the passion and the fact that, you know, Michkov really cares about winning and wants to win, right? And that's what you want in a guy that you're drafting at that level, because how many times have you heard about certain players or European
not
players
being competitive enough?
Or yeah, exactly, right? And look at this. It seems to be the opposite of that, in my opinion. So
yeah, and I want to point something out. So first of all, I'll say two things. So I love watching stuff with Kobe Bryant. I love Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. And if there's a clip of Kobe when he was 19, I think, or 18 when he came into the league, and he was immediately like, they were calling Jordan Black Jesus. And they're like, no, you got to call him Black Jesus. You can't call him Mike. You know? He's like, you can't. He's like, what do you, like, as a rookie, he's like, what are you guys talking about? He's like, I'm going to be better than that guy. Imagine a kid saying that at 18. Like, don't get me wrong. You have to be able to do it. If you talk that way and you're not capable of it, it's going to look really stupid. But if you're a high level athlete and you have that arrogance, it's not that surprising. It comes inherently. And there's actually a really great book. I mentioned this on Twitter earlier today, by Tim Grover. For those who are not aware, Tim Grover was the personal basketball trainer, physical trainer for Michael Jordan, Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, and so on. And he talks about, he has a book called Relentless, and he talks about this mindset and the examples that you were reading out loud, Vasili. Like that attitude is in the book. He calls them closers. Those people who score in the last minute of the game, they're usually that guy. They're the guy who's way too intense. They're the guy that people like, the guy who lives and breathes hockey. So there's two options here, and we'll move on from, we don't want to rest on this all day, but there's two options here. One, he's just being a dick, and he is a dick, or he's extremely intense and you know, and he's really goddamn good. Like, let's not forget, this is potential generational talent. So the Habs should be kicking themselves. This is like, Cole Caulfield's great, but he's not generational. Yeah. So this is potential generational talent. So if he behaves that way, like I'm the shit, and backs it up on the ice, he's also Russian. I don't know if anybody knows Russian culture. That's a big part of it. Like, that's a big part. I mean, I grew up with a large Russian culture in my family. I'm 50% Moldovan. from USSR. There's a big ego there. It's part of the culture. So I'll say that too. Maybe it's a cultural thing.
It seems like too he puts a lot of the onus on himself. Like he expects himself to perform at a certain level. So I think too there's that factor, right? Where like when you expect it from yourself, let's say you're out there on the ice and you see teammates maybe aren't bringing it to that same level, you're going to want to challenge them. Obviously, as an 18-year-old, as a rookie in the room, it's a hard thing to navigate, right? Because there's a lot of veterans there. And I think somebody else mentioned that on that HC Sochi team that there were some Canadians on the team, right? So imagine you have an 18-year-old kid speaking Russian, yelling. They're probably in the room, these Canadian guys, American guys saying, what's this kid coming in here saying,
yelling at me in
yeah,
Russian.
right. So I think that maybe there's just a bit of things maybe potentially lost in translation, and that's kind of how all this stuff kind of blows up to begin with. But I personally think that it's overblown, and I do think that to see this fire competitiveness out of such a young kid and coupled with all the talent, I mean, you can't be mad as a Flyers fan. You want guys who are very competitive, who are intense, who want to win, right?
And the nice part, which I keep fantasizing about, is when he does come over here, he will be playing with the most, because we're not going to be that bad by the time he gets here. Yeah. He will be playing with the most talented players he's ever played with too. So I imagine the motivation playing against, top players in the league, to be playing against Bedard, playing against McDavid, playing all these guys, to see how this guy ramps up. Yeah. How, because that could be a shot to his ego.
Even playing guys that he grew up watching. Even playing guys he grew up watching, right? A lot of players see that, and that motivates them too. So
I guarantee, I don't want to guarantee because I don't know the kid, but I would almost bet my head that this kid looks at these Ovechkin kids and goes, "I'm way better than them." Even if he's wrong, even if he's wrong. But I'm just saying, kids at that level, the generational talent, a lot of them, look, they might not say it out loud, but I've been around a lot of high-level athletes. They do not think they suck at sports. Like, they think they're awesome. Otherwise, they wouldn't get to the point that they're at.
Yep.
Especially the real high-level guys, like the 1% of the 1%. They're not, they can be humble publicly, but they believe that they should win. And they love to win. All right. Let's move on from Michkov. Let's get on to our next topic. And this one, I don't really know what to say about this one, Vasili, because my whole attitude is that I don't really think this is happening. So Tony DeAngelo is still here. For those who are not aware, there was a deal supposedly in place, confirmed by the GM, I believe the GM of Carolina. I forget off the top of my head. Maybe you can correct me there.
Yeah, Don Waddell.
Yeah, Waddell.
That was supposed to happen. Essentially.
And there was supposed to be a trade. DeAngelo moving for Massimo Rizzo, prospect that plays for Denver. Or did play for Denver, alongside Bobby Brink. Doesn't seem to be a projectable NHL player, but so far that has not happened. The theory behind that is that Erik Karlsson trade is kind of holding it up. Carolina is going for him. If they can't get Karlsson, they're going to go for DeAngelo. Yeah, maybe. I mean, my kind of thought is, like, do the Flyers maybe think that it wasn't a great trade? I don't know. $2.5 million for a guy who's going to put up 50 points in your team as a defenseman. It's a good deal. Maybe he's that bad in the locker room. I don't know. That could hurt his value, but I don't know. Maybe the Flyers are just not jumping to make this deal, and there's still time. So I don't know. What do you think, Vasili?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it probably is contingent on what's happening with Carolina. I think they weren't sure if Karlsson was going to move or San Jose was going to entertain that. And now that it's kind of come out that, hey, we are going to trade him, they're probably saying, well, if we can get Erik Karlsson, that's obviously an upgrade on Tony DeAngelo.
Well, why would their GM confirm the trade? Not ours.
And then
wait on a completion of another trade. My only thought is maybe it was to force San Jose to be like, oh, if we don't trade Karlsson, they're going to just get Tony DeAngelo for nothing.
See, that's a good point. I wasn't even thinking of that. My thought is just that maybe they didn't even know that Karlsson was available to this extent. So they had this in place, this comes up.
But right? he's been shopped since last season. That could be true. I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know. I was kind of thinking of I don't know.
It's a weird situation because even Briere was saying that he expects the deal to be completed too. So I don't understand, at least from both perspectives, what happened for it to fall apart. There must be some weight on something, or like you were saying, maybe there's a thought that, hey, you know what? We want to try to keep DeAngelo and move him at the deadline for maybe more
Or
potentially
do you
down the
think
line.
they asked for more? That's kind of what I was thinking.
It
That after
could,
the days passed, that he was kind of like, you know what, this is a 50-point player. Why am I rushing to kick him off my team?
yeah.
Let's see if I can get something for him. Be like, I want this guy.
Well, that's my thoughts because I think that's a good point to make, and I tend to agree because, like you're saying, he's a 50-point player at the trade deadline. If he puts up similar, rate to those numbers or a prorated pace to 50 points, let's say
You're
in
gonna
like
get a
60 games.
second round pick for him, third
Yeah,
round pick at least.
exactly. So if you're a rebuilding team, the draft capital at that trade deadline could be more attractive than, the prospect that was rumored, which is, I think it's Massimo Rizzo. I
Yeah,
mean, Rizzo, just to lay it out for people, he had 36 points in 39 games in 2021-22 and 46 points in 38 games in 2022-23 for the University of Denver. So like not the worst. I read a scouting report from Dauber Hockey. I haven't seen the kid, but possible top six upside. They said with his skill set, good hands and shot, but his skating needs a lot of work. So that's what it is. Like he has some offensive skill, but the skating needs a lot of work. So to me, that kind of sounds like a guy that might be a top producer in the AHL, but just never has the wheels to make it to the NHL. And then if that's all you're really getting back, like for the Flyers, you're definitely losing the deal. And I mean, you're subtracting DeAngelo, you're losing that 50 points. Maybe he's such a detriment to you and your locker room, and Tortorella just doesn't want him around. So you got to get rid of him eventually. But it's certainly interesting. Like, I don't think they're in a position where they need to force him out the door, but I do think that with training camps, around the corner in a couple of months, and there's always injuries. If the Flyers do want to move him, and this kind of falls through with Carolina, I don't think they'll have too much trouble because they're going to eat half of his salary at 2.5 million. He becomes pretty attractive. So I definitely think if they want to move him, they'll eventually move him. I just don't know if it's going to be to Carolina at this point, but we'll see, right? Like if let's say hypothetically Carlson gets traded to Pittsburgh, and then you see the deal go through, then you will have the concrete knowledge that okay, yeah, they were waiting, right? So we'll kind of see. Any more thoughts to add on that, Yuri?
yeah. I mean, I think you pretty much nailed it. I don't know if there's too much to make of it. It's kind of just sitting back, but
Just a weird situation.
It's just hard for me to believe that only Carolina is interested.
Yeah, I think
if you can add a defenseman for 2.5 million that'll play bottom pairing and put up 50 points, play on your power play. He can play on your top power play. There's not a single team that's like trying to move up that's going to have to go out and spend what $4 million on a 1-year deal on that type of guy in agency.
I mean, like I said, I think there would be interest. I don't know what the rest of the defensive market looks like. I'm pretty sure it's probably a lot more barren than it was obviously to start UFA, and there wasn't even a lot of defensemen anyway. So like if teams need a defenseman, I could definitely see it, and maybe closer to camp.
Ghost got 1 year, $4 million, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it makes sense. I mean,
1 year, 2.5 million.
The only thing that maybe teams are wary of is like, okay,
he had locker room.
Yeah, he had all the bullshit with New York. Okay, he repairs, rehabilitates kind of himself with the Hurricanes, but then he only plays a season with them, then goes to the Flyers and only plays a season with them, and now there's already rumors that they're going to get rid of him. So like, how many teams is that in a short span of time? Maybe they just don't want to deal with that or the character issues that come potentially with it. I'm really not sure because we're not in the locker room to know even what happened. So like it's hard for me to say, okay, this is the reason, but like that's the only thing that makes sense to me because the points and the money for the value that he'll bring on the ice. I mean, teams would be dumb not to want to grab him for 2.5 million.
There's no term.
There's no term, especially too if you're like a team that potentially like is not a contender, but let's say you're in the mix for the playoffs. You're like, well, you know what? We can shelter DeAngelo. Like we can put him on our third pair and he can score a lot of points for us. Like it could be an asset if you have the luxury to do that. So I don't know. I think it could be the character stuff, but we'll ultimately see. Like I still think he doesn't start the season on the team. That's my opinion.
I don't think so either. I think he's going to get moved. I just don't know if that deal was actually like as in place as they were publicly saying it was, or was it somewhat of a social manipulation? But maybe I'm wrong. It could be as simple as it seemed, and that's literally
they're waiting, and we'll see what happens.
The Carlson thing, yeah. Like I don't know, but I agree with you. I don't think the Flyers can go into the season, and we'll go through it on the depth chart. But like, if if you really want to do what you're trying to do this year, getting DeAngelo out of here does make sense.
You got to get some young guys in on
but
defense.
you won't be better getting rid of him. I'll just make clear that you're not getting like Victor Mete is not going to come in here and light up goals, and he's not amazing defensively. Like we don't have incredible options.
I think they're just hoping that you move DeAngelo. Yeah, you move DeAngelo now that you signed Stahl. It takes up another spot. So I think it's like move DeAngelo just to ensure that, we can get a Zamula in there because we need him to play in the NHL this year. Get an Adder in there, right?
I mean, it seems so far away, but like DeAngelo was playing 27 minutes a night for Tortorella at one point. So it's like,
to start
it's not like Tortorella was like, I hate this guy. I don't think he hates Tony DeAngelo. I think they maybe identify that, he might never buy in. Just like Hayes, like he might never buy in. They might always just have their own ego there and not do what Tortorella is asking, which is probably annoying, I would imagine. All right, let's get into the next piece of news. And this one's I think this one came a little bit out of nowhere. But it's a really exciting one. Just to get him locked up is exciting. Alexei Kolosov signs a 3-year ELC contract with the Flyers, averaging $925,000 a year. He will not be playing that first year of his ELC with the team. He will be with Dynamo Minsk, I believe is how you say it.
Yep.
And he'll be playing with them. Again, another good experience. He's been playing against men since he was 19 years old. He's 21 now. We'll go through it on the depth chart, but this is a high-end prospect, potential starter in the NHL. Maybe even better than Ersan from what we're seeing, at least his early career. It is, mimicking Sorokin level, Vasilevsky, Shesterkin level, maybe not Vasilevsky, but maybe more Shesterkin type of, start to their career. Doesn't mean he's going to be that level. He could be, he's a goalie, he's far away. But a guy we could see in the NHL, maybe in 2 years. I would say next year, AHL starter for him. Following year, probably NHL spot. And the Flyers will have some decisions to make because he's pretty high-end pick. What do you think about the news of Kolosov signing?
Kolosov stuff's really interesting for me, and it's almost like
a goalie guy. So.
Yeah, it's almost like they saw what happened with Fedotov, and we're like, you know what? Like, we don't want something like this to happen to us again down the line here. So let's sign him. And even if we have to burn a year of his, ELC by doing that, we have control. And totally. We, spoke with his agent and kind of arranged this all, right? Like his agent mentioned, a big thank you to the Flyers for trusting them, and that Kolosov will make good on his arrangement to come over, right? So obviously the Flyers are putting some trust in Kolosov and the agent. But I think just seeing that kind of dialogue between the team and the player shows to me that the Flyers weren't concerned about what happened with Fedotov, but they were wary of, hey, you know what? We have another Russian goalie here. Let's not have deja vu happen to us again, and let's just put ourselves in a position where we don't have to even worry about it, right? So yeah, I think signing him is obviously a no-brainer. I mean, like, look at if you just look at his stats, he's playing on a pretty bad Dynamo Minsk team. So Dynamo Minsk had 27 wins and 41 losses in 68 games last year. So like, they're really bad. They were at the bottom of the division, like second last team in the division, I believe, in the KHL there. And he had a 912 save percentage, 255 goals against average, 13, 21, and 5. So if you look at it that way, right, out of 27 wins, he had 13 of them. So like almost half. It just shows obviously that
and good numbers for really bad team.
Yeah, exactly. So it just shows that, I mean, he's a crucial part in their success, obviously, keeping them in games. And I think for the Flyers, it makes sense in a way to kind of burn his ELC here. Obviously, he's 1 year closer to another new deal when he comes over. And if he puts up good numbers, you might have to sign him at a larger hit. Like, I totally understand that perspective. But think about the Flyers' depth right now at goalie, right? Like, they have Carter Hart, they have Urson, they have Pedersen, they have Sandstrom. Like, if you have Kolosov come over this year as well, like, where is he playing? And he's a prospect and he needs to play and get his reps in. That's the most important thing for a young goalie, is to see pucks, get settled at the pro level in their technique and be confident in themselves. And when you're not playing as a goalie, all those things are not happening for you. Like, you do not have confidence in your game on a regular basis when you're not getting action regularly, right? So I do think for Kolosov, this makes the most sense because they wouldn't have been able to start him in the AHL this season. He would have been splitting time. It wouldn't have been great for his development.
Yeah.
Whereas in Dynamo Minsk, he's going to be the starter. He's going to play the majority of their games. And he's going to see a lot of work because they're not a good team. So there's a lot of shots on net there. You can really develop your game as a goalie when you're seeing the puck a ton and seeing a ton of rubber. Just in terms of his skill set, the most interesting thing for me is just his quickness. So he really uses his lateral speed to beat shooters to the angles. So what happens is, let's say the puck's going across the ice or crisscrossing and he's moving laterally, and he'll beat the puck typically to the shooter and be square to them before they release the shot. This is a lot of clips that I've seen of him. So if you look at the NHL and the way it's trending in terms of like east-west passes, stuff like that, and just moving laterally quickly with dynamic playmaking and the speed of the game, a goalie that moves laterally like that is a real asset for you in the prospect pool. So I think great signing by the Flyers. And for everybody saying that, hey, like, we shouldn't have loaned him, we should have just had him in the AHL, I disagree. I think this is the best thing for a young goalie's development, is to play as much as possible.
Yeah, and also amicable. I think that you build a good relationship with the KHL instead of just burying a guy in your minors who's, and again, I'll point this out. He was 19 years old when he was a starter in the KHL. That is more rare than the NHL. Just to put that in perspective for you, the KHL does not mess around. That's why we talk about Michkov, what he's doing in the KHL. That's like not a joke. It's not the AHL. Like, they don't develop players. They don't do any of that. Like, you need to be legit
on like a Sorokin type of Shesterkin type trajectory. Because if you look at their numbers and those two playing at a young age in the KHL and see what they've done in the NHL, so like it definitely translates. It's a league that shows like if you're a good goalie in the KHL, you have the tools to be a pretty good goalie in the NHL. So.
Don't you think it makes sense because the rinks are larger and like the amount of ice that they need to be aware of? Like, I'm not saying it's easier. There's an adjustment. I don't know. I'm not a goalie, but the amount of side to side that they have to move just because of,
I would say the big ice makes it harder.
The width of the rink, right?
The big ice makes it harder, in my opinion. And
the lateral movement.
Yeah, the reason being is because you have to move across that much quicker, and there's that much more ice to cover and more room for shooters to come in and pick your angles and pick your corners on you. So think about it, when you transition from that big ice to the small ice, well, now there's less room for you to cover. There's less for you to be aware of. The angles change, but you're not moving as quickly across because the ice doesn't span as large. So there's less room for players to make plays, right? So I think for KHL goalies, that's why you see them have a lot of success when they come over pretty much immediately, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's keep moving forward. This is another big piece of news and something we definitely talked about. I was a little surprised he didn't get a long-term deal, but Noah Cates did sign a 2-year deal worth $5.25 million. That's $2.625 per year, $2.65 million per year. Honestly, pretty much what I expected. I thought if he would get a long-term deal, which is probably what the scenario was, he was probably going to ask for 4.5 to 5. And I think the Flyers would be happy to give it to him if they knew his offensive production was going to continue to go up. And I think that's why they settled here on a 2-year deal. The value makes sense. The kid is going to be playing top 6 next year. He has statistically, analytically, was one of the best defensive players in the world last year. This is not your average prospect. He is a high-end prospect. I know a lot of people don't want to think that because he was drafted later and he's not putting up a ton of points, but there are not many players who can play defense like Noah Cates coming into the NHL, being taken from wing to center. That is not normal. That is an outlier. So he was able to get more money, and I imagine if they signed him long-term, it would have been bigger money, similar to what Farabee got for the 5 million, 5 years. You got to pay for those years. So they'll set it up. They'll have his big contract next, and I love Noah Cates, so I'm all about just locking him up. I wish it was long term, honestly.
Yeah, I mean that's the only, I think, caveat that I would have as well about the deal is I think from the Flyers' perspective, it would have been better if it was long term because I bet
they offered him 3.5 over 5 years, and
he was probably like, nope, I don't want to. But
and he's right.
I don't blame him, right? Because he's betting on himself. But the real reason, and I think a lot of the reasons you see a lot of these RFAs so far this summer not sign these long-term deals, even on other teams, is that cap slate to go up significantly. So
Yep.
agents are seeing that and saying to their clients, hey, like, don't lock yourself in now because you're going to be locked at this lower number. And hypothetically, if you wait a couple of years, you can get much more than you
Supposed
would
to
be
go
able to now.
twice,
So,
right? Supposed to be
yeah,
one
yeah.
big jump and then another
And then
normal jump the following year.
exactly. So I think a lot of agents are saying that. That's likely the conversation that Cates' agent had with him. In terms of the value of the deal, 2.625 million for 2 years. So that's like a 2.6 mil cap hit. I think that's super fair. Like, think about this, right? Like, he is a little older. I mean, he's 24 years old. He's going to be turning 25. But you have to think last year was essentially his rookie season. And he had 38 points in 82 games, and he was playing some of the toughest minutes defensively. So just based on what he's bringing to you on the ice, the fact that he can play on the PK, play on the power play, play even strength. So he's an all situations player who got 38 points in his rookie season, and you're playing him not
On a
even on
team
the
that couldn't
wing.
score at all.
Yeah, a team that couldn't score at all, but you're not even playing him on the wing. Like, you shift a winger to center for essentially the first time in his career almost, and you're playing him in certain nights on first line role with Travis Konechny, a second line role. He's shadowing Connor McDavid. So you're asking a lot out of the kid. So I think for 2.6 million, I mean for 2 years, just based on the value he's going to bring you, even if he does not improve off last season, and he's just that player, it's definitely worth the deal.
Yep.
I do think that, I mean, there's more offense there, right? Like 38 points in your rookie year. Usually you see players progress and get better offensively. Like, I personally think that he's going to be around a 50, 55, 60 point potential player in the
I think
league.
so
Like, he
too.
could definitely jump up 10, 15 points. And I don't think that's out of the realm at all. So that's why I think he's probably going for saying, hey, if you're going to sign me for 5 years, like, I want 5 million or 4 million, because he knows like a 50-point center who plays the type of defense that he does in the league, that's essentially the going rate, right? So like, I don't blame Cates for
Dano.
bet. Yeah, Dano, exactly. That's a great comparison. He got a $5 million deal around that for a bunch of years with LA. So I think it's really similar. Dano is a great comparison to what Cates potentially could become. I think if some more scoring is added, I think he'll get the chance to
It
get some
took
more.
Dano time too
Yeah,
to
I think
become a
he'll get
better
the
scorer.
chance to get some more offensive opportunities, right? Because you have Sean Couturier coming back, so you're going to take some of that defensive load off of Noah Cates with Couturier coming
Oh,
back.
that'd be
So
so
he,
huge.
yeah, he might get
Huge.
some. He might get some more offensive opportunities due to that, right? So I think for the Flyers' perspective, you would have liked to see them lock him up longer. But from Cates' perspective, he's betting on himself. And personally, like, I never understood. I mean, as a fan, obviously, you're gonna want your team to get the best deal, the best value, all that
Yeah.
stuff. But personally, for me, when I see a player bet on themselves and their own talent, I like to see that. I want to see a guy say, you know what, I believe in myself. I know that in 2 years, me doing this bridge isn't going to matter because I'm going to play so well that I'm going to outperform this and earn my next deal and have it be even more significant. So I like to see that competitive nature. And I think when a player does that and bets on himself, it shows how competitive they are and how confident they are in their skills. So I think it's a good sign.
Yeah, well said. Let's move on to the next one. Flyers also same day locked up Cam York on a 2-year deal, worth 3.2 million overall, 1.6 million per season. Shout out to Chris Mayer on this one. By the way, he broke that story. He actually hit
Awesome
me up
stuff.
before he put it on Twitter. And I sometimes I get stuff early and I don't say anything. I'm not big on that. But shout out to him for pulling that off. I think he was off by a very small number. But I think he was
It was
off
like
by
a
like
signing bonus
300K.
type thing.
Yeah.
So don't even worry about it.
But he was pretty
Chris
much
killed
spot
it.
on. He knew, yeah, he knew it was coming at least 24 hours ahead of time. So shout out to Chris for that one. But Cam York signs. I think this one is a little bit different than Noah Cates because York, he has proven to play at a certain point, but I think this is another one bet on yourself thing. If he would have got a long-term deal off of what he's done so far, he probably wouldn't have broke that much money, but his role is about to get larger. Same thing you brought up before with the cap. Definitely a bet on yourself thing. He's going to be a very good value over the next 2 years at 1.6 million. And then I imagine he'll get a nice bump, maybe in that $5 million range when he hits that point. But yeah, I think he has a high ceiling. So we'll see. I don't know what York will be yet. I'm not certain he's going to be like a number one defenseman, but he definitely has complementary top pairing potential in him. And if he hits that, he's going to get a big payday. Because that's still a top pairing defender in the NHL. So I don't know. I like the signing. It's cheap, and if he turns out to be what we hope he can be, we'll be happy to pay him at that point.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's kind of the same, logic and what we were talking about beforehand with Cates, right? York is betting on himself. He knows, and his agent knows the cap's going to go up, and he's going to be taking on a lot more minutes and probably have a lot more power play time. So why lock yourself in long term when you're going to get those opportunities and you can increase your own value on the ice and potentially cash in on a very, very large deal down the line here, right? So he's obviously betting on himself and his skill. And like I said, I love when players do that because it shows they're confident in themselves. My interpretation of the deal is this, right? It makes sense for both parties. And here's why. Despite people kind of having a little bit of outrage why they didn't go for the long-term deal here. Makes sense for York because he gets 2 years to try and establish himself as a top pairing defenseman, right? He hasn't proved it yet. He's shown some glimpses, like defending McDavid, some nice power play sequences, but he has not proved yet that he's a top pairing guy. Has the potential, like you were saying, Yariv. I don't know if he's ever going to be that bona fide number one like guy, but I think he could be a 1A, 1B type who's really good on the power play and really good mobility, good first pass, can be a great complementary guy. But yeah, he has those 2 years to establish himself as a top pair defenseman and then cash it on his next deal if he does do that. And the Flyers get a player now who's going to be able to play in their top four for only $1.6 million. And think about around the league, right? Like how many top four defensemen do you see that are potentially top four caliber only getting paid $1.6 million a season? It's very slim. So it's a great deal just in terms of the value. And I think York has showed, if you look at, last season when he came up, that he is definitely a second pair level defenseman. Is he able to handle those top pair minutes and assignments consistently on a regular basis? I mean, that remains to be seen. I think he's going to need some help in terms of like who his partner is going to be there, but we'll see how it goes. I think it makes sense for both teams, and we'll see how York plays and if he ends up cashing in after the 2 years. But for the Flyers, great value, and for York, you have a chance to have an even bigger payday after this contract.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, as you're talking about the cap raising, like when the cap goes up, Travis Sanheim's gonna be a lot easier to trade.
100%. Yeah. So if you need to move on from him because you have to, let's say, sign York and Cates to bigger deals in a couple of years, that's something you could potentially do. You also got to look at Owen Tippett's going to be an RFA next year. They're going to have to re-sign him. So like there might be some juggling to do with the cap, but I think as it raises, it makes a lot of those longer term deals that the Flyers do still have the roster, like even a Ristolainen, like a Sanheim, a lot more easily movable, right?
Yeah, and there'll be other guys moving, like Cam Atkinson won't be getting re-signed, obviously, when his contract ends and so on, and then we'll have to worry about Tippett and other guys. So I guess the last two we have remaining here are Morgan Frost and Ole Lycksell. I suspect they'll be done soon. Lycksell, my guess, is going to get something similar to what Ronnie Attard got, a 2-year, 825,000.
I think
guess.
he might get like 2-way, 1-way type deal where like, you're going to be with the
second
Phantoms
year
this
might be 1 year.
One way. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah, I think that's a good guess. He definitely touched the NHL, so I suspect he'll get done. He'll get a pay bump, but I don't expect it'll be too much.
I think it'll be around probably even below. I don't know what's he making now, around like 700, 800,000, something like that.
Yeah. So maybe I'm wrong, but
he'll touch the million range, but I would even be surprised. I could maybe even see 900,000. Who knows?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think he's going to make more than the max AHL term.
Yeah.
Even though he's close, but I think that's a good thing because he'll be what you said, because he'll be a little bit older. He'll be in another year. He'll be 24, 25 next year. Then it can
more
be
roster spots freed up too by that point.
If you project him that way, he might get that type of contract. Now Morgan Frost, the more interesting one. I also think he's going to get a 2-year deal here. I think it's going to be a bet on myself type of thing. Again, second half of the year he was phenomenal. First half of the year he had a little bit of up and downs. But he's definitely on his way up. I don't know, Vasili. I'm kind of thinking just around 2 million flat between Cam York and Noah Cates in value, just because he's a little more consistent than York. He's played a little bit longer. He had a great second half. I could see him getting a little bit more money. So maybe 2 years, 2 million, something like that.
I mean, that's a pretty good prediction, Yariv. Like, I think Frost could definitely get around 2 years, 2 million, something along those lines. I mean, he had 46 points in 81 games, so almost about half a point per game. And most of that came in the second half. So I think he might aim for a little more money just based off the point production, and his agent's probably going to argue, hey, look at the second half of the year. Frosty led the team in scoring from January onwards. He was a point per game, and then the Flyers are going to counter with, hey, well, he did that in the second half. What about the first half, right? We need to see more consistency. Then you kind of be in the middle of the negotiation, most likely. So we'll see. Personally, I think with you signing Cates and York to these bridge deals, and you have Tippett coming up, I mean, I think it'd be in their best interest to try to go long term with him if they can, like 4 or 5 years. I don't know if that's going to happen because I suspect the agent and Frost are going to have the same thinking. Like, why lock yourself into this? Because if you put up an 8
on the way up,
yeah, if you put up a 70-point season, 60-point season, even you're gonna increase your cap hit and your salary tenfold based on what you're getting now. So like, who knows? I mean, for the Flyers, they probably like to sign him long term just so they can avoid having to potentially pay him more down the line. But I just don't know if that's in the cards with the way the market's shaping up with the cap and everything.
I think there is a world where Morgan Frost gets traded. I don't think they want to trade him. I don't think they're trying to trade him. I don't think they're having conversations about trading him. But if you look at where this team will be in 2 years, I mean, you can have a conversation about almost all of them. I don't think Noah Cates or York will go anywhere in 2 years just because we don't have replacements for those. But if the Flyers draft a top center and he's going to be in the top 6 and the Flyers need cap space, he's a guy who could fetch you a really nice price. If he's not locked up long term, as we can see, it's even more valuable. So I think both options are there. I can't if the Flyers are offering him a long-term deal, it's going to be less money than he's going to get if he waits, right?
Yeah,
Realistically,
exactly right.
He probably will put up at least 50 points in the league. He's already at that now. He could be a 70-point player. I mean, it could happen. So
the potential's there, yeah.
That's a lot of money. That's a big difference.
And you got to think, right?
48 to 70.
He's a really big power play producer. Like, he feasts, at least at lower levels. That's kind of where a lot of his production has typically come from. And the Flyers power play stinks. Like, they've been last in the year the last 2 seasons, or last in the league, I mean, the last 2 seasons. So, like, you got to think, right? Like, if their power play improves just a little bit, like, you're adding probably 5-10 more points to his totals there. So like, you got to kind of think about it from that perspective.
If this team is any good at all, everyone's production will go up. And I'm not talking about like next year. I'm talking about if they're better the next year, the following year. Let's say Cutter Gauthier is here. They managed to add another talent. Guys are getting better. They're going to produce more, and they're going to ask for more money. So
100%.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody's stupid here. It's all about risk reward for both sides. All right, let's talk a little bit about Dev Camp, and then we'll go into our depth chart conversation. So we'll just recap. I wasn't able to go to Dev Camp this year. I did watch the live stream of the scrimmage. Wow. I know you did as well, Vasili. So neither one of us were able to go to Dev Camp, unfortunately, this year. I'm pretty bummed out about it, but did get to watch the game. So we can share our thoughts a little bit about that. Just for those who aren't aware, again, I'll say it's on YouTube. You can watch on the Flyers YouTube channel. Team Lindros won that one in the end in a shootout. The game was back and forth the entire time. Several really good performances. Maybe we can even talk about that when we talk about the depth chart even more. So we'll keep this pretty high level. But I thought it was a really entertaining game. I love that they went full ice and they did a 5-on-5, 4-on-4, 3-on-3, and then a shootout. Really cool format. Wish it was there. It was packed house like it used to be, which was also awesome. And there was not a big name prospect outside of Forrester and maybe Brink there. It wasn't like because Cutter Gauthier was here or Michkov was here. People just wanted to see the team. So that was awesome. And there were definitely some really great things. Avon probably was my biggest surprise for just how NHL or how pro ready, I don't want to say NHL, but pro ready he looked. And yeah, other really noticeable stuff. So I'll let you go. And we can talk about it as we kind of go through it.
Yeah, so I did want to mention really cool story. Obviously, Alexander Tchurchny, getting to be invited here to Dev Camp is really great. Just based on everything that happened with his father. So I think, shout out to the Flyers for doing that. And he is playing, I think it's State Hill College this upcoming season. So who knows, right? Like if he plays well, could be a possible contract down the line. I thought he showed some stuff in the scrimmage. I thought he was pretty noticeable, to be honest. So that's a really cool story to kind of see that. For dev camp in general, in that scrimmage, I think Bobby Brink, he's the most noticeable for me. He stood out all over the ice. He's making cuts. Yeah, he's making cuts in the middle of the ice constantly towards the net, getting to those areas where he's usually successful. Even though he's a small guy, he gets to those open spots, and he plays around the net a lot and in the corners. So that's a part of his game, and it's good to see him, kind of dominate in this development camp in this scrimmage, because if you look at it, there's a lot of younger guys at this one, and he's one of the older guys. So you kind of want to see that. And that's kind of the same thing for Desnoyers, for Tyson Forster. I think all of them, you could kind of see that they were not a level above, but, they were kind of the veterans at the camp and were performing, I would say, the most consistently each shift during the scrimmage and things like that. Alex Bump really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Obviously, he had 2 goals. Amazing shot on one of them where he kind of broke away with some speed and then really places it right over the glove hand of the goaltender there, and rips it. Yeah, absolutely rips it. And shout out to Steve Kornianos, because when we had him on for last year's draft and kind of breaking things down from the 2022 draft, he was saying to us even back then that he thought that Bump was a really great value pick at where the Flyers drafted him. And primarily it was his shot that he was really impressed with, right? That he had a really, really good shot and really good hands in around the net. And I think you saw a lot of that in the scrimmage, and it should be interesting. I mean, he put up some good numbers in the USHL last season. I believe he had 15 goals, and he had 39 points. So played pretty well, and he's going to be going to University of Vermont in the NCAA next season. So, usually when you're moving up a level, it could take some adjustments. So I'm interested to kind of see how he progresses at the NCAA level. But I think another kind of late round pick there for the Flyers, that looks like they have some NHL potential. So I think it's a great thing. And it's kind of showing, like what Steve was saying last week, that a lot of these later round picks the Flyers are making lately seem to be finding some gems and some guys that, hey, they have an NHL skill set. And then one other guy I wanted to mention was Oliver Bonk. I thought looked really good too. And it wasn't necessarily anything offensively, but it was just his ability to kind of kill plays. I thought when people were players were kind of coming in over the blue line towards him, he was really good with his gap and just like using his physicality even as only like an 18-year-old. So I'm interested to see, like, you can obviously see why the Flyers selected him where they did, because his defensive play is really advanced, I think, for his age. What do you think? Any other comments?
Yeah, no, Hunter McDonald was very aggressive. Fletcher did call him out as a player to watch on the 32 Thoughts podcast. I'm a little skeptical about Fletcher's opinions, but he did look pretty good. I think Wisdom looks like he needs to get stronger, but I think he looked good. He looked like he's ready to play in the AHL this year. But his game depends so much on strength that I think he's just going to take a little more time. Definitely agreed with your thoughts on everybody on Bump. I mean, he looked ridiculous. Shockingly. Like the shooting was next level. A lot of the guys I didn't expect, like Gendron, I didn't expect to stick out too much. And we'll talk about this in the in the depth chart conversation. But I don't want to take too much away from it, because I've seen stuff at dev camps and it not develop into a regular season, but there were some really good signs.
Promising for sure.
Yeah, it just looked like a good camp. It was interesting that, there are no real high end guys there. And this will probably be the last camp that's like that, which is weird.
And such a turnout. So it kind of just shows that people are really behind.
Oh, they're ready.
What Briere and his staff are doing, and they're kind of ready to turn the page on the old regime. So I think just seeing that turnout is great. And it'll be interesting. I think there's a lot of guys, that the Flyers picked in later rounds that look like they could potentially be NHL players, even if it's only depth players. Like, you see certain things where you're like, like the makeup of their game and skill set, it does and could translate to the NHL. So the scouting staff, it looks like they've been doing a good job. Like, I know Hextall scouting staff, it kind of got crapped on just based on what's happened with all the picks that were made there. But it looks like even though Fletcher and his staff didn't do a great job trading and getting value that way, it looks like their drafting has been pretty good. And I mean, I think the credit there probably goes more to Brent Flair. But I mean, Flair looks like he knows what he's talking about and knows what to look for in terms of these prospects and taking these higher swings on guys in later rounds. And also, too, if you look back, and we've mentioned this before, like look at Minnesota and that team right now. I mean, a lot of those players are all Brent Flair, Fletcher draft picks. So it just shows like, you know what, there's a track record there where these guys usually do have pretty good success at finding NHL guys within the draft. So I think it's a good sign for the Flyers, and hopefully Briere and his scouting staff here can kind of continue on and add to what they've done.
The last draft was one of the best drafts I've ever seen from the Flyers ever.
Yeah, agreed.
It was fantastic. They're all full of risks, all drafts. You don't know if you're good in the beginning, but this one felt good.
Promise.
It felt good. The draft felt like a win. All right, let's get into our last segment here. This will be, for those who are listening to the audio only, this will be better on YouTube just because I'm going to share my screen here. But for those who are not aware, there is a cool tool on Cap Friendly that called Armchair GM. Allows you to come in here and kind of stick to the cap and build your team. Now, I repurposed it for something else, and this is something Vasili's kind of really looking at this for the first time kind of now. I showed him a little bit earlier, but this is kind of new to him as far as the order of the players. He has some idea, but not 100%. And the idea here, I was trying to take a perspective of the team itself, and I grabbed every contract they have. So for those who are watching, don't look at all the contract values. I made up a couple for Frost and for Lycksell, and also everybody else I just added that was in the system at 777,000. So just kind of bare minimum there. And really the goal was just to see a full stack. If we look at our positions, and I made some assumptions, it's probably a little bit early. We'll have to revisit this. But I made some, kind of predictions here of how the organization views their depth at positions. And, I did take into account experience, where they're at in their game, if they're NHL ready, if they're in the NHL, and their age obviously matters a lot in this as well. So some guys, I might have them higher ceiling, and in the future, I'll see them higher on this list, and we can talk about that. But for now, that's kind of where I see them ranked amongst their peers if they had to play today. Right. That's kind of where it is. Does that make sense, Vasili?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you did a great job putting this together, buddy. Like, this definitely takes some time. So thanks for doing this. It's going to be a fun segment that we go through here.
Yeah. So we'll go left wing, center, right wing, lefty,
Sure.
right D, and then we'll end on goalie. So, and again, I'm open to moving any of these around, but top left wing, I made an assumption here with Cam Atkinson, assuming that he's healthy. He has played the left side before. The Flyers are stacked on the right wing. They are a little bit short on left wing. A guy like Cam Atkinson, I could see, and there are obviously other options. There's Owen Tippett, there's Travis Konechny, but because Cam Atkinson wasn't part of this team last year, I'm assuming that he is going to be placed on the left wing because of the lack of depth, the fact he can play there, and that you need to fill out that top six. And he's a top six forward. So I have Cam Atkinson as number 1. I have Joel Farabee as number 2 on the depth chart. Then I have Scott Lawton as a left wing. I didn't put him as a center. Number 3. Then Delorier as 4. Then we get into kind of our bubble territory here. We have Ule Lycksell as 5. Then Rhett Gardner, the newcomer, who the Flyers signed for most likely a pure AHL role, a very physical player right there, kind of a 27-year-old bubble NHL kind of guy. And then below that, you have essentially our prospect. They got Alec Bump at the top there, above Denver Barkey, who I moved from center to left wing because I found out that he plays primarily left wing from Steve. And then Alex Ciernik, also last year's draft pick. And then the last guy, who I actually can't find too much about because he didn't play last year, Santeri Sulku. Not sure where he stands, so I have him on the bottom there on the left wing. Vasili, what are your thoughts? Anything you think should move, go up, down? Any?
I just look at it and I think on the left wing, you kind of realize how much depth the Flyers lack in that position, right?
This is why I did this. This is exactly why I've been doing it.
It's a great viewpoint to kind of see where the team needs to work in terms of their roster building and what they might need to target next in terms of drafting, or let's say if they're making trades for players, what they might need to look to do. I don't really have any qualms with the way you set this up. I mean, if I'm going to change anything, it would just be swapping Farabee and Atkinson, really.
Okay.
Um,
Why?
but I mean, reason being, I mean, I think Farabee with, let's say, a full offseason behind him, you might have the potential to either match Atkinson's production or potentially outperform him. I mean, we'll see. He was on pace in the past to be 25, 30 goal scorer. I mean, we don't know if he's going to get back to that, but I assume that with a full off season, he's going to look more like himself. But there's really no telling. I think he did play a lot better at the end of last season. That kind of shows as time kind of elapsed. You see him getting more comfortable with the surgery and what that's done to him and how he has to kind of adapt his game at the NHL level. But whether it would be Farabee at the top position there or Atkinson, I mean, that's an accurate description of how to kind of lay it out here. I don't think Lawton belongs in one of those two spots up there. And I think for Atkinson, it probably does make sense to move to the left side because you look at the right side and there's not a lot of room. And if you have him on the right side, you're not having Forster or Tippett potentially there. So you're gonna have to make some adjustments. Though I will say, if any of these guys were gonna go to the left, I would maybe want to be Tippett, just being the right-handed
Well,
shot
and think about that top line of Tippett, TK, and Coots.
would be really good. Yeah, and I have said before I want to see Tippett and Couturier play together at some point this upcoming season. I just think their styles would mesh
And
well.
and to add to that, Vasily, I'm sorry to cut you off, but there is history of Joel Farabee and Cam Atkinson playing together.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
to that
Playing
point,
well. Yeah, that
playing
was
very well together.
that Farabee, Broussard, Atkinson line was pretty good when they got put together a couple of years back there. So yeah, definitely. It's interesting. I don't know how it's going to play out, but one thing that I think does come to mind though is you look at that left side, and I think next draft they might be targeting a lot of left wingers potentially. I would not be surprised to see that just to kind of add to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance that Tippett will play left wing with TK and Couturier, assuming that they're healthy.
I could see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Tortorella loves him, so
yeah, they're gonna try Farabee, they're gonna try Atkinson, they're gonna try Tippett, they're gonna try Lawton there.
see what works,
Yeah,
basically, right?
yeah, they're gonna try a bunch of guys. All right, let's move on to the centers. So this one was, I would say a little more difficult than the left wing one. So Sean Couturier, I got at number 1. Number 2, I have a Noah Cates, and number 3, I have a Morgan Frost. The reason I took Cates is because Frost hit a pretty good level offensively, but not as high as Cates did defensively. So I gave Noah Cates the edge there, but not by much. So I have Frost at 3. I have Cutter Gauthier at 4. I think if he were to play on this team today, that's probably where he would be. And most likely he would either be moved to wing at this point, or would force maybe Noah Cates to go back to the wing potentially. But I really think that overall this, that's what I like about this too, is you can see why patience and taking time and how things need to line up contract wise and position wise, and things need to be available. So I have Cutter Gauthier at 4, Ryan Poehling at 5, 6 as Tanner Lazinski, again a bubble player at this point. Elliot Denoyer right behind him. Then I have Adam Brooks. Then I have Cooper Marudi, who's played time on the right wing, but I kind of see him as a center just with the positions that are open this year potentially in the AHL. But we'll see. He might be a right winger this year again. Playing with younger guys. So we'll see. But I have him there just because he's really good at the AHL level, and so is Adam Brooks, and they're both guys with NHL experience. They deserve to be there. And then you have the pure prospects underneath them. J.R. Avon there at the top of the list. Owen McClellan right behind him. Cole Knuble right behind him, and Ryan McPherson. And I think all of those guys are pretty good prospects. None of them project to be that high, but Avon looks really fast. I mean, he looks like a damn good skater with really offensive skill. So I don't know what to make of him, but I really liked him. So what do you think about the centers?
The centers is interesting. I mean, if you look at it, I think there's not really much to debate. Like, Couturier is the number 1 if he can be healthy, obviously. I mean, just based on track record and obviously what he's done in the past. Noah Cates, I think, should be the 2C spot there over Frost. Reason being, the defensive prowess, as you said. And I mean, he only had 8 points less than Frost and played a much much better defensive game and is on the PK for you and more of a mainstay. So I totally get that. Frost as a 3C makes sense. Just, that's the production that he put up last year is essentially what you would get out of a pretty decent 3C in the league, around 40, 50 points potentially. Paling and Gauthier. Obviously, Gauthier is there for the potential. He's not going to actually be on the team this year. But this does kind of outline, like, everybody was outraged. Well, why aren't they bringing Gauthier over now? Well, look at the team. Like, where was he going to play? And where are you going to put him? Like, you're either going to put him at center on the fourth line, which you don't want because that's not how you develop a top player like that. He needs to play in top 6 opportunities, or you're going to move Cates to the wing, and I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to develop him as a center, or you're going to move Frost to the wing. I think they also want to try to develop him as a center.
And you also have Tyson Forrester.
Yeah, exactly. So I just don't know. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense why they kind of let him go back, kind of overcook a bit at the NCAA level. And I think, too, obviously, when you look at Couturier down the line here, who knows with the injuries, they're going to probably need to find a replacement for him eventually. I don't know how he's going to hold up now with all these surgeries. So we'll kind of have to see there. In terms of the prospects, I mean, I don't think there's really much debating. Like, I might have Denoye above Lazinski because I just think they're higher on him now. I think Lazinski might be
I think that's a good one, actually. I think that's completely fair. I would say the organization probably does view that. No,
but other than that, I mean, it's pretty standard down the line. Like, the prospects of the prospects, there's really no telling how it's all going to turn out. I think out of the prospects, we don't really know about Knuble and McPherson as much. We'll see kind of how they do, respectively, like in college. And, I think McPherson's playing for the Penticton V's in the BCHL, so we'll see. McLaughlin, not too sure if he's turning pro or going back for another year in junior there, so we'll see. And then JR Avon is going to turn pro and go and play for the Phantoms.
I think McLaughlin is playing another year in NCAA.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
Yeah, but either way, I know.
Check that because I'm probably saying something wrong.
We can check. Yeah,
I'll
double check. But yeah, JR Avon's the intriguing one for me there because it's just his speed, and I mean, he was really good for the Peterborough Petes the last 2 years. Like in 2021, he had 68 points in 64 games. In this past season, he had 60 points in 59 games and had 15 points in 23 games in the playoffs. So I think Avon could be one of those guys
undrafted.
Undrafted that might surprise people, and he might be a speedy energy guy for you on the third, fourth line down the line here for the Flyers. I really like that. They invited him to camp and they ended up signing him after he was undrafted. But yeah, the centers, looking at it too, just to kind of sum up, like if you look at the depth, they need to add. And I've been saying that for, a year and a half in this podcast. They need to add some more centers. Obviously, Gauthier is a big part of that. If you can play center at the NHL level, we'll see. But I think they definitely need to add some center depth potentially. So
100%. Like the center depth, where like Cutter Gauthier is great. We're also making an assumption that he's a center.
Who knows at this level?
I could have him on the left wing if the Flyers draft Celebrini or whatever, the Cheetah kid. If they draft a top center or something, there's a good chance that Cutter Gauthier
is a left winger.
They might try him as a left wing. It's less tempting to force him into the middle if you have another guy who can play number one center. But this is why I love this view. And it also shows you your timelines and, who's stacked above these guys, really. And I think we're actually pretty accurate to what the Flyers would have internally as well. All right, let's go over to the right wing. So this one was fun. So I have Travis Konechny as 1. I have Owen Tippett as 2. I have Matvei Michkov as 3. I'm not going to lie, I had Michkov as 2. But then I was like, nah, I think Tippett needs a little more respect. But I do believe that Michkov today would score as many goals as Tippett would in the NHL. So I thought about that. I was like, I'll give Tippett the edge because he might be a lot better next year. Like if he hits 35, 40 goals. But Michkov is on that level. Just from everything I've seen, the same way people look at McDavid coming in the league, putting up 100 points, Patrick Kane putting up 88 points. Like this Michkov kid is capable of doing that. So it was a little hard for me to put him at 3, but I think he does belong at least at the top of the stack behind Tippett and TK just because they're legit. Definitely TK is a legit top line player, in my opinion, at a point per game pace, 40 goal pace last year. And then Owen Tippett is entering that now. So I give the edge to Tippett. Then I have 4. I have Tyson Forrester, again, a guy who's clearly NHL ready. maybe he's better than everybody. Who freaking knows at this point? But yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. He is the fourth best right wing in this system, in my opinion, and the third best at the pro level right now in North America. So I do see him on the third line next year. Garrett Hathaway I had afterwards, a scoring punch with offensive and defensive game like him. And then I gave him the bump above Allison. Allison's injuries have kind of held him back, but I do see them as actually quite comparable players. And I see Allison being a better goal scorer, maybe not as good at defense, but better at the goal scoring side. So we'll see. Allison could move above Hathaway if he has a rebounding year, but he has to really have a full year. Then at the top of the or the young guy stack, Bobby Brink. You can even make a case he might be above Hathaway and Allison, but I think with his injury, the safe bet is to assume he's going to be playing in the AHL majority of the year. So I'm going to assume that he's below Allison and Hathaway. Then after that, this one was tough. I went with Devin Kaplan behind Bobby Brink. I think he is got the highest floor of these guys. And I think for sure he looks like a pro player. So I give him the nod there. I don't know if he's going to be a top 6 forward or top 9 forward. Or a bottom 6 forward at this point, but he definitely projects to be a top 9 forward, and almost a guarantee the way that he plays. So I give him the edge there. I gave Samu Tuomala the edge because when I looked at Tuomala's season and Alexis Gendron's season, who I have right after him, they both did something very similar. Tuomala did, a ridiculous scoring pace. I think he had 26 goals in 22 games or something like that, something stupid. In the Finnish prospect league, and then Gendron in a league which quite frankly is easier to score in the queue. I'm taking a dash of, I don't know, wait and see with his actual scoring upside. But obviously both of them, in my opinion, are kind of neck and neck, and good thing for Gendron because he moved way up, having a monster season. So then I have Alexis Gendron. After that, I have Zaid Wisdom. I initially wanted to have Wisdom above Tuomala and Gendron. I went below because he didn't have a great season last year, but I do think
the E too. So
yeah, exactly. Played in the ECHL last year, so I had to bump him down. But I would not be shocked if by the end of the season he's above Devin Kaplan if he can rebound, because that's where he was initially at one point. So I just need to see, again, I think he's a little more raw, so he's going to take time. And then I have Bryce Brodzinski there at the bottom. More, not that he's a bad prospect, but more just it's a really stacked right wing. And that is not a place that we need a ton of help in. So what do you think?
Yeah, for the right wings, I think it's easy and it's evident that this is probably the position where the Flyers have the most depth, aside from goalie. You can definitely see that just looking at like the talent of players. In terms of how you laid it out, I mean, yeah, no brainer. Konechny's your top right wing, obviously, especially after the season he had last season. Who knows? I mean, if Tippett gets around 35, 40 goals and he's younger than Konechny, maybe we would flip-flop that in a year's time, right?
Too.
Because I think there might be a bit more untapped potential with Tippett that we're kind of unsure of, especially with the power play. I think he can really be a power play weapon with his shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I was saying though, he might be a guy you put on left wing because of that shot, right? With the right-handed element, because you switch it around and he's open to just blast one-timers, and that's kind of his specialty.
And just to add to that, I'm sorry to cut you off. Matvei Michkov is a left-handed right winger, so
it makes sense to keep him on right wing.
Yeah. Well, it's also very similar what we'd be doing to Tippett, right? Big shooter, off wing.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense for sure. I think I would have Michkov ahead there in the third spot. I mean, just when you're labeled as a generational talent, and you
think he should be at second or third?
Third.
Okay, third.
Yeah, just you know the
I'm
talent
down for that number 2 slot.
You know the talent level that comes with Michkov, so it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it kind of slights Forrester a bit because I think he's really talented too, and you could argue that he should be there just based off his AHL season last year being an all-star, and then how he came up and performed really, really well, right? Like Forrester, I think he had 7 points in 8 games last year at the NHL level. I think that's not too shabby to start your NHL career there. So I think you could arguably have Forrester at 3-2 just because Michkov's not going to be here for a while in terms of like 2 to 3 years, most likely. But either or, I think I'm fine with. And then the only other thing I would really change, I'd probably put Brink ahead of Allison. I personally think that they're going to end up being higher on him, even going into training
Where
camp. I think.
you think even in training camp they will be?
Yeah, I think Brink's going to show a lot. Like personally, I wouldn't be surprised if he challenges for a spot and has a potential to make the team. Like if you just look at how he performed in Dev Camp, I think that might translate, and I think there's something for him to prove, especially with the injury. I think maybe he's kind of that forgotten guy where he came in and played in the NHL right out of college for a bit, we kind of thought he was going to make that jump a lot sooner. So I think there might be something to prove for him, and there's a bit of a chip on his shoulder there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Brink really impress.
Got a higher ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. Then
Got a
higher
top
higher
six forward ceiling.
higher ceiling than Hathaway for sure. Like if you're going on pure potential, you should probably be above Hathaway, right behind Forster and Michkov, I would say. But obviously Hathaway is going to be your guaranteed fourth line guy. They signed him. He's going to be there in that spot. So I totally agree there. And then with the prospects, I agree too, right? Like, the only thing maybe would be Gendron switching with Tuamala, but after your explanation, like with the QMJHL not being, the best defensive league, very high scoring, I think it makes a lot of sense. The Finnish league, even though it's prospect league, is probably a little better defensively, harder to score in, to be honest. So you look at it from that perspective, it makes a ton of sense to me. And Wisdom's obviously, with that ECHL stint there, he kind of gets pushed down a bit, but I think he has the potential to rise back up just for the fact that his floor is high, where like he can be a fourth line guy for you, bring some toughness.
Like Devin Kaplan is similar floor.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for right wing, it's clear the Flyers need to add anymore. If anything, they might need to subtract from their right wingers to add somewhere else potentially. Like
right, because we didn't include Cam Atkinson in this list.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And like if you look at it, right, like think about this, right? You have Konechny, you have Tippett, you have Matvey Michkov, you have Forster, you have Brink. Like that's 5 guys that are on the right wing for you. Like there's something has to give. Like someone's
For
eventually
3 spots.
Yeah, somebody's eventually gonna have to move out of those guys. So like obviously it sucks to see. You don't want to see guys get moved because you want to see them get a chance and play well with the Flyers. But if the Flyers could parlay a Brink or something one day into somebody on the left wing, let's say, or to help with them with defense, I think it might be a move that they try to explore down the line. Who knows? But I think if they're going to subtract from anywhere, right wing probably makes the most sense, right?
Yeah, and there's also other there's conversation about moving Scott Law, and this is why I talk about the guys who are around 30. I think Sean Couturier is a guy you really build around. To be honest, I think Scott Walton's a great part of this team, but I don't think he's like a guy you have to build around. Yeah. So you look at guys who are probably going to be gone at that point. Cam Atkinson will be gone. And Scott Lawton, there's a good chance he'll be traded before the end of his contract.
That's 2 extra spots, yeah.
Right. So there's 2 extra spots right there. You see Cutter Gauthier coming in, Forrester, Michkov, whoever the hell we draft whoever else makes a jump, right? There's Denoyer, we know already. We know there's Brink. So we'll see. I mean, next year will be a big thing. And we don't know how good JR Avon will be. We don't know how good Alex Bump will be, and Barkey and Kaplan. And it's just going to be really interesting. And Tuamala, he might be better than we think, right?
He's got the speed, man. I'm excited to see him at the AHL level next year.
Tuamala was a second-round pick. Bobby Brink was a second-round pick. Wade Allison was a second-round pick. You know what I mean? Like, Wisdom, I think, was a third-round pick, if I remember correctly.
I think so, yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Like so, again, these are not low picks either. These are guys with talent. And even Allison, I'm fine bumping him down, but he's not a guy who, he's not a throwaway player. The only reason that we're even talking about him not being part of the team is just because of his injury problems. But if he doesn't get injured this year, which
Wisdom's 4th round, just to confirm.
4th round, thank you. Yeah. If he can have a healthy season, I mean, there's a good chance he could move up this. He is a goal scorer. He's a physical, like third line, middle 6, bottom 6, whatever you want to call him, but he has a scoring punch. He's aggressive.
Toughness.
Yeah. So, and he's still relatively young. So I'm interested to see him and Lazinski rebound this year because it's their last chance with the organization.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's move down to the D. We'll start off with left D, which is obviously more of a strength here. Left D, top of the left D, I have Travis Sanheim. Number 2, I have Cam York. 3, I have Mark Stahl. 4, I had Nick Seeler. I did struggle with the Stahl Seeler. I wanted to give Seeler the edge initially, but I was like, Stahl's name, his reputation. I was like, I can't see them assuming that he's worse than Nick Seeler, especially Torts. And I don't think that means that Sealer's not going to play in the top 6. I just think, you look at it, he's still a bubble guy to some degree, even though he had a great season last year. He's still a bubble guy to some degree. But as you see, Anthony DeAngelo is on this list right now. So he, if he's removed from this team, Sealer's an automatic slot in. So I have Sealer. Then at what do I have? 5, I have Victor Mete. Again, a relatively young defenseman who was, in my opinion, rushed into the NHL. Why he was playing in the NHL at 18, 19 years old is beyond me for an undersized defenseman. But, he's got a lot of good tools, bubble player right now. I do give him the edge over Zamula just because of experience. Zamula might actually be higher on their depth chart just because Tortorella really likes him. So I can definitely have the conversation moving that up. But then I can also make that case with Emil Andre. And that's where why I didn't make the decision. Because Emil Andre at 6, he potentially could be higher than Zamula and Victor Mete. I just didn't want to make the assumption because they both have pro experience. Zamula's right there. Mete has already been played in the NHL for quite a bit, actually. A lot for a guy who's only 24 years old. Then I have Will Smolik after. Actually, that's not right. I don't agree with that. That should be wrong. Then I have, Adam Yinning on here behind Emil Andre. Again, played in the NHL a little bit, a former second-round pick, a guy who still has potential to be an NHL player, and I think probably will get a call-up this year. Then after him, I have Hunter McDonald, very similar upside to Adam Yinning, looks to be like a defensive defenseman who can skate. I don't know. He might move up. He looked really good at camp, but he's also a little bit older. He was drafted as an overager, so he's not an 18, 19-year-old kid there at dev camp. I think he's 21 years old already, so he could be with the Flyers relatively soon, or at least with the Phantoms relatively soon. I like him. Will Smolik was signed. He's an overager as well. I think he's the same age as McDonald. He was signed as a college free agent. Haven't seen too much of him, but he's got a lot of size. Mason Millman I have after him. I would like to rank Mason higher, and maybe this is his year, but he's really getting buried and was in the ECHL. I still like his upside. It's not bad. He's got a really good skill set. He's a great skater. He's got offensive punch. He's not bad defensively. So I don't, he can move up, but I don't know if he's going to get the opportunity. Then after that, Ty Murchison, and then after that, Brian Zanetti. I think they're a little bit interchangeable. Either one of them has not done too much. Maybe you should move Zanetti up above Murchison, but I do kind of see him as an interchangeable there on the lefty. What do you think?
Yeah, for the lefty, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you have Sanheim there, obviously, just due to the experience. And I mean, who else is really going to play that number 1 role to start? I wouldn't be surprised, though, if York has a really impressive camp and plays really well, if eventually they start using him in that kind of LD1 role. You definitely see it. In terms of Mark Stahl, like, you kind of have to put him at that number 3 spot just out of the respect factor. Like, it's almost like a Keith Yandel type of thing. Like, I don't see them really scratching him unless it's like he's playing terribly or like there's an injury. Like, I think, he's going to play most of the games here. So it might make Sealer the odd man out over Walker on the right side there. I mean, who really knows? I know you have Walker listed as lefty, righty. So, like, it's interesting to kind of see what will happen. But the rest of it, I mean, it's hard to disagree. Like, Victor Mete's playing the NHL, so he's going to have precedence over Zamula and Andre, just in terms of the depth and like where you're going to rank them. In terms of where the team probably holds them, though, in the view of like what they want to do long term, I think Zamula and Andre are probably above Mete there. I know Flair's really high on Andre, like he mentioned in some comments in the presser that, hey, if it was up to him, you'd probably have him with the big club this year. And I think that SHL experience for a couple seasons playing amongst, pros, it kind of shows that he's pretty established, and he's pretty established for a young guy just in terms of like adapting to the pro game. So I don't know how much AHL time he'll need. I do know that there's a caveat where if he's not playing in the NHL, they might have to loan him back to the SHL.
Yep.
So I don't know what happens there. Like, I think if the Flyers have to loan him back to the SHL, and if they can't get an agreement where he can play for the Phantoms, to be honest, I think Andre will make the team, because I don't think they want him to go back to Sweden. Because then you can't bring him back, right? Once you loan him out to Sweden, you cannot bring him back. So that's something that you got to kind of be wary of. So I wouldn't be surprised if Andres, makes the squad. kind of out of camp, just in a surprise. But he obviously has to earn it and play well. He does seem like a Tortorella type player in terms of the way he like works and pays attention to the details. So he's the big surprise for me, I think, out of the left side. Zamula too. Like I think Zamula Torts obviously likes what he sees. Like I think he'll get games. I don't know how consistently, but I think he'll get time for sure. And then the rest of them, I agree, right? I think Yinning's probably next. I mean, he might get an NHL game or two. He did last season, but we'll obviously see. Mason Millman, I'd like to have higher too. I just think he has a nice skill set. It just hasn't been utilized that much. I mean, maybe at the AHL level this season he'll really get a chance to kind of show it off a bit more. I think that would be great for him, but we'll kind of see what happens there. But the rest I agree with. I think Andre might be the surprise of the bunch.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to the Andre thing, just a shout out to Steve again. If you guys listen back, maybe even 2 years, yeah, it would be 2 years now, with Steve. You know, we talked about Yinning, and he talked about Grans, and I forget who the other Swedish defenseman was. There was 3 Swedish defensemen that year taken, both of his peers taken above him. And Steve told us very clearly, he's like, he's the best defenseman. The only reason he is getting less attention is because he's smaller. And as you can see, Emil Andre looks legit, and I think they're going to roll with him. It's going to be interesting because they have waivers to worry about this year. I think Ronnie Attard might have to go through waivers. At a certain point, like they might just waive DeAngelo if he's on this team still.
Yeah, or even Sean Walker, like they might want to say, hey, like you're a veteran. We'd rather have the young guys up and playing. I think about it, it's a rebuild. So you got to play young players.
You don't want to lose guys for nothing. You know, you don't want to pass guys to waivers. You're going to be taken. Like, I think Nick Seeler would get taken. I think Ronnie Attard would get taken. I think Zamula would get taken. There's a good chance. Yeah. Maybe not Zamula just because he hasn't done enough yet, but Ronnie Attard just was at Worlds. Like, I don't know. I can't see it. I have to make sure he's actually waiver eligible, but I don't know. It just seems like the Flyers are going to have to roll with a deep defense to start the season. I think you're spot on. And you never know. Injuries are always a thing. So
he is waiver exempt. So Attard.
Who Attard? Okay, good. Okay, so he'll probably start with the Phantoms then, and it'll probably be Andre. It'll be about protecting the contracts as well. And you can see the left side looks decent, but clearly the Flyers are going to need to add another defenseman. We'll go through it on the right side. They clearly need to add another top defenseman and another top center. And we've been talking about that, but I still, there's a huge gap at center. All right, let's do the right D. Top of the right defense, I have Rasmus Ristolainen. Number 2 behind him, I have Tony DeAngelo. Again, giving DeAngelo the respect that he played 27 minutes a night under Torts.
50 points.
He had 50 points. I'm not going to call him a terrible defenseman just because it didn't work out here. Still number 2 on this pretty weak defense. So I was looking at Detroit Red Wings defense. Their defense sucks. Next, I have Sean Walker as the number 3 behind DeAngelo. Again, Walker the edge in defense, but I don't know yet. Maybe he's better than DeAngelo, but I just didn't want to make that assumption because his production's nothing special. Then I have Ronnie Attard. I think he's right on the bubble there. Could be in the NHL if there's injuries, but I think he'll be playing a huge role for the Phantoms and will be one of the first call-ups immediately. Behind that, I had Louis Belpedio. Belpedio is a big part of the AHL Phantoms. I have him there because he's a veteran. He's a bubble guy. He's probably never going to play in the NHL. And, you know, you can make the case that the guys below him are even ranked potentially higher at this point, but I wanted to give him the respect because he was really good for the Phantoms last year, and he got a 2-year contract because of it. So I think he's just a pro. I think he's developed. I don't think he's ever going to be better than he is now. But I thought he deserved some respect there. Then I have Oliver Bonk. Again, I think you could give him the edge over Belpedio easily. He's probably a better defender next year already than Belpedio, but he won't be here for a bit. So I kind of stack them here with Bonk. Then Helge Grans right below him, giving him the assumption because he comes in with a high pedigree, though I didn't love his game at Dev Camp. Didn't look great. Ethan Sansom. Obviously, Ethan is a rising player. I liked him at Dev Camp, and I could see by the end of the year having
scored a goal.
Yeah, a nice goal, and I could see him a very nice goal actually, and I could see him jumping Gronds potentially, regardless of his draft position. But he has a lot of the same skill sets, a lot of the same tools, and is better offensively. So we'll see. Then Carter Sutherland, I have him here just naturally because of his draft position. We will see. He's a later pick, so maybe he'll be another Ethan Sansom. And then Mateo Mann, who is a long shot, big defenseman, very raw from what I understand, and will take a bunch of time to potentially turn into maybe an AHL player. So I kind of have him at the bottom of the stack.
Yeah, so for the right defense, Yariv, I mean, you laid it out pretty much how I would. The only difference, maybe you could argue Walker over DeAngelo, but like, I mean, he might not be that much better defensively anyway. He's been pretty much a third pair guy, and the offense, obviously, DeAngelo clearly, outperforms him. So
He
I think you
produced
had
a
a
top 4 rate.
yeah, exactly. You got to have DeAngelo there, and he's played in top fours majority of his career, if you look at it, and just kind of his usage in general. Ristolainen as number one is a no-brainer. I mean, you could argue that he was one of the best Flyers defensemen to end the season. You want to obviously see him continue that. We'll see what happens with him in general. I know he's a little bit older, so I don't know if he plays out the rest of his contract here. They end up eventually moving him, at the deadline at some point. If they can get a great return back, it might be something that they do, but then you're also subtracting from a really bad right defense anyway that you need to add to. So there's a lot to kind of digest, but if you look at it, I think Adder's placed accurately, like he's kind of on the bubble, and Belpedio makes sense. He has pro experience over Bonk, though Bonk obviously has the upside piece where he's going to be like a guy that they're going to probably look to eventually graduate in the next couple of years, I would say, to the AHL and then probably the NHL after that. But he's probably a guy that for sure that like the Flyers are penciling in, hey, like 3-4 seasons, Bonk's going to be in our top 4 for sure. So that's probably what they're looking for with that pick. And then Helga, Gronds, and Samson, I don't disagree there. I mean, Gronds has AHL experience, whereas Ethan Samson is just coming off of playing for the Prince George Cougars there in the WHL. So he's making his kind of first foray into the pro level next season with the Phantoms. So it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts there. And then it makes sense for Carter Sutherland and Mann to kind of round it out, just with their being a 5th rounder and 7th rounder respectively. So not much for me to change. If anything, I think a surprise just in terms of like the rankings, maybe if we're going to do this, let's say every year for next season, you could see, Ethan Samson, I think could rise. I liked his game in Dev Camp, and I think just with him being 6'3", big body, a guy that closes pucks out, I think that's somebody that the Flyers are high on, even though he was picked at a later round. So I think we could see Samson rise and be a guy that the Flyers maybe look to potentially graduate up on the right side and give some more chance to see if he can be an NHL player here down the line. So I could see that for sure. And obviously Bonk's the guy that's going to rise up. The main thing when you look at the defense for the right side is they got to add in a big way, even with drafting Bonk. I think next year with all the picks you have in the first 2 rounds, I think you're going to see the Flyers heavily look towards defense again.
Yep.
Specifically probably the right side too.
I imagine
just looking to get some high end.
2-2 next year, I guess, right? They have 4 picks in the first. Right now, they have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. Yeah. You go for whatever's available. I don't know the best players available.
You could see I could see 2 to 3 defensemen being picked out of the 4.
Yeah, next year is supposed to be high end defensemen and high end forwards. So
yeah, but so far the right defense and center, I think, and even left wing, you can say those are the positions that they're probably going to look to add at.
Yeah, and it's look, it's next year is going to be a huge draft year. You can already see the names that are added onto this year and what impact that is already on this depth.
Yeah.
One more year of this is going to be huge. They got to probably get a couple more picks if they can to try to speed it up. And, again, Scott Lawton might still be traded for a 1st round pick. All right, let's keep going on to goaltenders. This, I would say, was the hardest to do. 1, goalies are hard to project in general. 2, not all these guys are going to be playing on the team. They're all playing at different levels. They're all in different age groups. But this is what I went with. So Carter Hart, clear number 1, highest ceiling of the group, best pedigree. Yeah, all around superstar. Love him. Number two, Samuel Ersan. I went with Ersan over Fedotov here because he played in pros. He showed up and he looked damn good this year. I think Ivan Fedotov, I had him at number two because he looked very good in the KHL. He's got great numbers there also. He's one of their best goalies. So I think there is a potential that he's a little bit older than Ersan as well by about 3 years. So potentially could be, but when I saw Ersan play and adapt to the NHL so quickly and have such a great year in his second year, he didn't play a ton in the NHL, but he looked great in pretty much every outing. And then he led the Phantom. So I'm going to give him the edge at number two, Fedotov at number three. I have Cal Peterson at four. I expect him, maybe he's as good as Fedotov. I don't know. The guy needs to rebound. Most likely, I do believe he's going to be starting for the Phantoms this year. I think there's a good chance that he'll be playing for the Phantoms to start the year because of his contract, and you can waive him freely. Then I have Alexei Kolosov, and I went with Kolosov above Sandstrom because one, he's already playing against men. He has a higher ceiling than maybe everybody above him outside of Carter Hart. And I suspect maybe by the end of this year, even next year, he might be number 2 or 3 on this list. But Kolosov is the rising star on here. Then I have Felix Sandstrom. Again, I don't think he's a bad goalie. I think he projects to be a backup in the NHL. And he's the only one of this group outside of Peterson who's had a better career than Sandstrom. So I gave him the edge. But he's the only one that doesn't project to be a starter, in my opinion. Fedotov, Ersan, Kolosov, and Hart are all starters. So I bumped him down. And then I have the 3 picks, and I have Bjarnason as the top ranked one. Bjarnason, what I saw in Dev Camp, and I saw Jason Martinez say it, he does look like Carter Hart.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
He said when I interviewed him or asked him a question, he said like he tries to model his game after Hart, so it's pretty cool to get picked by the Flyers. So I think makes sense, right?
Love that. I think he's got an inch or two on Hart too.
Bit taller,
Yeah, it looks like they did a really good job drafting him. I really liked what I saw. And then Yegor Zvergin, right after him. I don't know if he's actually worse than Bjarnason, but this is why this is so tricky. It's going to take time, and I think he's actually probably on par. He seems like a great goaltending prospect. They take a long time, and we probably won't see either one of these guys for like 5 years, at least 3. And then you have Matej Tomek, who's still part of the system. I have him on here because they own him. He's technically still developing. I don't ever expect to see Matej Tomek playing for the Phantoms or for the Flyers. So I have him there at the bottom. But if you look at that and you remove Bjarnason, you move Zvergin, and then you remove Fedotov, Flyers had to draft a goalie. And now you can, when you break it down, like this is what I really like about this. When you break it down like this, you understand where the organization is thinking, why they drafted 2 goalies at the, in the second and in the third, right? Back to back like that. They know where their holes are and they know where they need to fill them. So what do you think about the goal? This is your specialty.
Yeah, so for the goalies, I mean, it makes sense, like you're saying, just to break it down. Like, why do they draft Carson Bjarnason and Igor Zvergin? Obviously, if you remove those 2 and you remove Fedotov, you're looking a little bit thin there, and Tomek doesn't even really count if you think about it. So at that point, you only really have Carter Hart, Ersan, Peterson, and Sandstrom, and you're getting a bit thin. So if you want to, you say the Flyers had a really good prospect pool for the goalies. If you want to keep that up, you got to kind of replenish that, right? And add to your goalie prospects through the draft. So it makes sense why the Flyers do that. In terms of the way you laid it out, I totally agree. Carter Hart, I mean, in my opinion, talent-wise, top 10 in the league as a goalie. So obviously he's going to be number 1 here. Ersan, I'd have the second here, just based off where the Flyers kind of hold him and think of him. Like, I think Tortorella is very, very high on the kid. You got to factor that in. I think the management is too. So I mean, it makes sense to have him in the number 2. Also, just look at how he played in the AHL. He was a huge part of the Phantom success last year, and I mean, went 5-0-0 to start his NHL career. So like, obviously he has upside, so it makes sense. Fedotov, I get why you put him third. I mean, I understand that he played really well in the KHL. Silver medalist at the Olympics. For me, just based on what's happening, I would actually have him below Pedersen and Kolosov.
Interesting.
And it's just because I don't think he's ever going to make it here at this point.
But where do you think his skill level is though?
His skill level,
I agree with your statement.
his skill level, I'd have him third, just based off like what he's done in his
Okay.
career, like top level numbers in the KHL, silver medal at the Olympics, guy that could probably, if he came over to the NHL, would be able to transition pretty quickly to the NHL level. Could be a similar Sorokin, Shesterkin type, just with his size and everything. But I just don't think we're ever going to see him at this point, and
I
that's kind of the
agree.
way it's been trending. So due to that, I would probably have Carter Hart, Urson, Kolosov with the potential there. And then I would probably have Sandstrom ahead of Pedersen.
Mm.
But yeah, I think Sandstrom and Pedersen there. The reason being, I think Sandstrom probably has more of a future in the NHL going forward. I don't think that Pedersen's ever going to make it back to being an NHL goalie. I mean, I'm being pretty negative on that, but like, I just look at his numbers from last season, and he had a 375 goals against average and an 868 save percentage on the LA Kings, and the Kings were a playoff team last year. So like he was really bad, and their defense is pretty good. Like they were pretty stingy. They got Kopitar and Deneau. They're not a bad defensive team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And look at the AHL level. He had a 288 goals against average and a 904 save percentage. So I just think like he's kind of penciled in to be your AHL guy, and I think the Flyers are going to bury him there, and they're going to really try to probably move him if they can at some point. I don't know if they're going to be able to, but I suspect like just if you look at the contracts, you probably don't want to lose Sandstrom. So I doubt they're going to try to put him through waivers. So they might try to keep him up. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But I think Pedersen's probably the shoe-in for the AHL
They could
starter.
they could buy out Pedersen with 1 year left
They
potentially.
might do that. I can't remember how many years he has left. A couple of years, I
Two
think.
2 years.
Two.
2 years
Yeah.
at 5 million.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. I could see that for sure. And then just the way you set up the prospects makes tons of sense. Like Carson Bjarnason picked in the second round ahead of Zvragin. Obviously, you're going to have him there. He was the number one goalie for Central Scouting, so it makes a lot of sense. And he looked pretty good at Dev Camp too. And then Zvragin, he played really good in the prospect league in the KHL, so the MHL there. So we'll see, right? Like where he goes. And then Tomek is kind of just a throw in. So I agree. I think it kind of shows that other than right wing, goaltender is probably the next best position in terms of depth for the Flyers right now. So it could be a position of strength for them in the future, where potentially maybe they get to trade somebody to add to these other positions, right? So we'll kind of see where it goes. But I think for the first time, you could say in probably 25, 30 years, the Flyers' best position in their prospect pool is goaltending. I don't
Yeah,
think
look at it.
many people would have ever thought about that. Just if you look at you know, the starter potential in all these goalies. Obviously, right wing too. There's a lot of potential there, but I think goalie is a really good position right now for the Flyers, which is great to see.
Yeah, hell yeah. All right, and then the leftover names for those of you guys who are not aware. I should have probably put Tomek here too, but these are guys who are never coming over to the Flyers most likely. David Kasha was here. He's over playing Czech Republic. Valery Vasiliev was drafted by the Flyers like 10 years ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, and he's still, again, the Flyers still hold his rights, so that's why he's
Yeah,
listed on
interesting
here.
thing about Vorobiev I have to bring up that we talked about a bit is that he actually plays for SKA St. Petersburg, so could potentially play with Matvei Michkov. I don't know if that means that down the line maybe the Flyers look at him in a bottom six center type role potentially. Who really
Well,
knows how it plays out? But it is interesting to think about. So
I mean, he's an interesting guy because he's a good KHL player. He
yeah,
probably could play in the NHL and be a good player here, like bottom six
I just
forward.
think his opportunities they kind of wore thin, and the past regime was kind of just sick of him not kind of living up to the potential they had for him, and they kind of just separated. But I could see him coming back potentially. Who really knows? Especially with the center depth lacking.
Yeah.
So
And you can see how big of a loss Ryan Ellis is to this team if you really look at
especially with the right defense.
the
Yeah.
right side depth
I
and
mean, man, I always
how that
say
would change the list.
Yariv, like perfect right pair or right side defensive to put with Cam York would have been Ryan Ellis to help with his development, but it's
Shoulda, woulda,
unfortunate.
coulda. I mean, who knows? He's
Yep.
gone. It is what it is. All right. That was fun. I think
Great
that we can
segment.
call that a
Yeah.
show. Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed doing that. I essentially do that by myself, like on a nightly basis. All right. Anything you want to let people know about it outside of you now being available on Daily Face Off?
No, yeah, just we're gonna keep continuing over the summer. We don't take breaks. We're, probably the only Flyers podcast that consistently continues throughout the summer and has an episode out every week. So keep an eye out. If you guys want Flyers hockey talk, you're going to get it from us this summer. And just thank you to everybody, right, for supporting and, continuing to support us. And, all that daily face-off stuff wouldn't be possible without, you guys tuning into the show, reading articles. So, like, just huge thanks to everybody for continuing to support us on the show.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so just a second what Vasili was saying again, thank you all so much for listening. It's been an awesome ride, and we're going to go through the summer. We're not going to stop. There's going to be more content coming also, and we're obsessed. If you guys are listening, you're obviously huge Flyer fans, and so are we. So we're not going to stop this through the summer. And again, just a reminder to please like, subscribe, share, hit the bell for notifications. Comment, share, whatever. Check out our team store, which I never talk about, but
check out that buckle up Michkov shirt, man. It's fucking insane. I love it.
Yeah, there you go. So check out our store as well. I believe it's in the details of every one of our videos at the bottom there. And just everything you guys have done has been amazing. Thank you all so much for listening. It's been so much fun to do this, and we're gonna keep going. This was a fun episode.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening. Remember, we love you. And remember, always stay gritty.